It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview Chad Milton, who is the owner of Catfish on Ice, the Nashville Predators podcast. How are you doing today?
Hey, Brandon, I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to start a sports fan podcast?
Absolutely. I've known for as long as I can remember since I was a kid that I want to get into sports broadcasting, sports journalism, and all that stuff. And so as I went through middle school and high school, I started trying to figure out ways to write for the school newspaper. I was really active in playing sports as well, so it's kind of weird to write about sports and play sports. But that's kind of how I got started. I always found it, even as a young kid, I found it very entertaining to watch the Sports Center highlights and have a favorite team in every sport and have all the jerseys of the players. And so it just kind of like evolved from there. And as I've gotten older, I've just looked for different opportunities to uh, get my platform out there. And so social media helps out a lot in today's day and age to for people who are trying to break into that atmosphere of covering sports. There's a lot of different avenues you can take that maybe wasn't around 10 or 20 years ago. And so that's kind of the journey I went on. And then I've been a Nashville Predators fan since they came here over 2 decades ago. And so I've been kind of writing about them for a few years now on a platform. But as far as doing a podcast, this is a brand new journey for me. And so it's really exciting and very fortunate.
Can you talk about, of course, how you came up with the name of your podcast, Catfish on Ice?
Absolutely. So it was kind of a collaborative effort. I can't take full responsibility for coming up with it completely on my own. But the podcast is part of the Hockey Podcast Network, and the guys that run the Hockey Podcast Network, we all kind of collaborated and kind of came up with different names, and kind of were having this open-ended discussion about what names we can come up with, and we landed on Catfish on Ice, and we wanted something unique, something that stands out, but something that also ties to the Nashville Predators franchise. And since the Preds franchise is known for throwing catfish on the ice, the fans are known for that. It's a pretty well known tradition among hockey fans. We decided to come up with that name.
That's a clever way. What were some of the names that were in the bucket of names for the podcast?
Oh, we had one name the first name I came up with was Broadway Breakaway. And that one kind of got thrown out pretty quick just because it can be kind of confusing. You can get that confused with the Broadway in New York City, and so it would kind of like maybe. But Nashville does have their own Broadway, which if you've ever been to Nashville, it's kind of their main strip where you get all the honky tonks, and that's where Bridgestone Arena is located, where the Predators play their home games. So that's kind of how I came up with that name. We came up with some other ones that were honestly so bad that I've already pretty much erased them from my memory, because they just weren't very good names. But yeah, it took a good day or two to really brainstorm and think. To me, that's been one of the hardest parts of coming up with the podcast, is coming up with a clever name. And so I owe a lot of gratitude to the Hockey Podcast Network for helping me out to come up with that name as well. And so it was just a joint effort, and we came up with a good creative name.
Can you talk about what you talk about on your podcast?
Absolutely. So we try to just instead of just covering the X's and O's of the game, we try to be storytellers. We try to have a lot of fun, almost like if you and your buddies were sitting in the living room and just talking about the game. We try to keep it really laid back, real fun. It's myself, Chad Minton, and also I'm joined by my co-hosts Colin Bluen and Rich Howe. and they join me for most of the episodes as well. And we just treat it like we're a couple fans hanging out at the local restaurant or hanging out at the water cooler, like people like to say. And we're just having fun. And we talk about the team, but we also talk about other things outside of hockey, whether it's, we'll rank like some of the local Nashville venues and where people should go to check out good food or good beer or something like that before the game if they come to Nashville. We try to get into a bunch of different topics and try to not just cover the X's and O's of it, because you can get your X's and O's anywhere, but we want to offer a different perspective of it, be storytellers, and just have fun with it.
Can you talk about, of course, the process of getting on with the Hockey Network and what that was like?
Yes, that was that's something that came out of nowhere for me. I did not expect for a network that's really just growing. The Hockey Podcast Network, just to give some people perspective on them, they're in the middle of their second season running the network, and the network basically covers a wide range of hockey podcasts. Every team has their own podcast, and then you also have a different, more broader based NHL podcast as well. So I do invite everyone to go check them out. So we're part of that network, and they basically reached out to me. I want to say it was right around Thanksgiving, and they just reached out to me on Twitter, and they were just really kind and really talked about some of my work, and were very interested in bringing me on to do my first podcast. And I was really nervous because I had never done my own podcast before. I knew a lot about podcasting. We all listen to a lot of podcasts these days, but I hadn't done my own yet. And so I kind of had to talk myself into it because I was a little nervous at first. I was like, do I really want to do this? Do I think I can do this? Am I going to screw this up? And I decided just to dive right in. It felt really good that someone was interested in my work. And so all the gratitude and all the thanks goes to the Hockey Podcast Network for having faith and confidence in me and giving me this opportunity. It's an amazing thing, and I'm really, really grateful for it.
Can you talk about what you do for the Pridelines?
Yeah, so I also am a site expert, which is basically just a site editor. That's what they call it. They're site editors as site experts. And I basically just am a site editor for Pridelines.com, which is a part of the Fansided Network, which is basically a sports website that covers sports from a fan's perspective. So that's kind of their niche. Is they want fans to be writing these articles and fans to be covering these teams because they want to be a voice for the fans. Because sometimes fans look at a game differently or look at a team differently, or they look at a player differently than perhaps maybe a sports journalist who's been doing it for 30 or 40 years. And that's not to throw any shade at the veterans who've been doing this for decades. Those males and females and all those guys and gals, they're awesome as well that are in that business. But we try to offer a different perspective. And so that's kind of what we do at Pridelines. Is me and a bunch of other contributors. We offer the perspective on the team from a fan's perspective. And we, again, almost like the podcast, we try to have fun with it. We try to be really laid back and just give fans another outlet to consume their sports.
Are there anybody that you have interviewed on your Catfish on the Ice podcast?
Yes. So we're 12 episodes in, so we're still very, very new to the network. But we have gotten a couple really awesome guests that I was very thankful for bringing them on. We had Puckpedia on. Puckpedia basically covers a lot of the salary cap stuff that goes on in the NHL. They cover a lot of the contract negotiations, free agency, all that stuff that can get kind of complicated sometimes. And so it was awesome to have them on one of my episodes talking about that stuff. And then we've also had Jack, who runs J Fresh Hockey. He does a lot of the analytical stats and stuff for hockey. Because hockey is a very complex sport. There's you got to be really into math to understand some of these stats that come out of the NHL. And so he's just a pure genius when it comes to his analytics. So I had him on for an episode and he talked about that. That was awesome. And it's kind of a never-ending thing where you're always looking for the next good guest to join your show and give you that different perspective. So I'm kind of hoping to get some more guests in the near future.
Who are some of the guests that you look to have on your Catfish on Ice podcast?
Oh, I would love to have some former players. That's kind of number one priority for me, because who can tell you better about the sport than a former player who actually played the game, was actually in the locker room, put on the jersey, and went out there and put it all out on the ice. And so that's kind of my next goal that I have set for me, is to get a former player on the show. It's a long journey. It's since we're only 12 episodes in, it takes time to build up that guest list. And so that's kind of what we're working towards right now. We're trying to build more and more episodes. We're trying to build that following. We're trying to get better and better each episode, improve on the mistakes we make in previous episodes, and just keep getting better and better. And eventually the guest will come. But definitely, for sure, I would like to have some former players on the show in the near future.
Do you see yourself getting like guests like Pete Weber, the voice of the Predators, on your show?
Oh, wow. Pete Weber coming on the Catfish and Ice podcast would be a dream come true. There's not too many local Preds journalists or broadcasters in the market that are more respected than Pete Weber. I've been listening to Pete Weber cover the game since I was in high school, watching the Predators. He is royalty when it comes to Preds coverage. And so if Pete Weber came on our show, I would probably just bow down and say I'm not worthy, honestly. He's a true legend. So Pete Weber he can come on the show. He can come on every episode he wants. Let's just put it that way. if he'd like to.
That's wonderful. What other future plans do you have for the Catfish on Ice podcast?
Yeah, we're looking to grow our social media. We're trying to come up with new graphics for social media. We're always trying to get more ideas for future episodes. We're definitely looking to make a community outreach thing to where we can find some local business sponsors and have a partnership with them. I mean, it's just the opportunities and the possibilities are endless. And so we're just taking it one episode at a time, one day at a time, to try to keep getting better as a show and get better as host, and bring high quality content that people can laugh at, can feel comfortable with. And just, because life gets so serious out there, and sometimes we just got to sit back and enjoy it and be entertained and have a little fun. And so that's what we try. That's what we try to bring to our listeners. Is we try to bring some really good hockey coverage, but we also want our listeners to have a good time while they're listening, laugh a little bit, and just have a good time.
Who are some of the Nashville Predators players that you are favorite to?
Oh, that's a really good question. Are we talking current players or past players?
Current and then past.
Oh, okay. Threw it into a two-part question there. All right. Let me start with current players. I can't. It has to be Pekka Rinne for me. Pekka Rinne is like that role model that you never want to see retire. Like he just the way he carries himself as a human being is so commendable. And he's been the Nashville Predators franchise goaltender for, I want to say at least 2008, 2009. He's been in the system. And he's just a great human being. He's a great teammate. He's a great leader. He's a great representative of the city of Nashville when it comes to your sports athletes. And so it's going to be really hard to see him retire in the next year or two. And so Pekka Rinne is definitely number one for me. Other players that are currently on the team, I really like Rocco Grimaldi just for the way he plays the game. He's a really fast player. He plays bigger than his size. I can really appreciate that because I was one of those athletes as well in high school where I wasn't the tallest guy. I wasn't the biggest guy, but I got out there and I hustled and I tried my best. And so I love Rocco Grimaldi. Philip Forsberg is an easy player to love just because he's so talented scoring the puck. And so those would probably be my top three. Roman Josi is also in there as well. There's so many likable players on the Preds right now. If you're looking for a new team to cheer for in hockey and you don't have a favorite team, the Preds are a good team to choose. Past players is a good one too. I would probably have to go. I'll go ahead and just say the number one player that got drafted by the Preds, and that was David Legwand. He was the first player to ever be drafted by the Predators when they were an expansion team, and he holds a lot of franchise records to this day right now. And he's just that one player that I remember liking first when I first became a fan of the Predators was David Legwand. So I probably have to say him for past players.
What advice would you give upcoming podcasts looking to start their own podcast, whether it's their own fan podcasts or talk about the Nashville Predators?
Yeah, for sure. So I know there's a lot of aspiring journalists and writers and broadcasters. Some of them might still be in middle school or high school, and they're looking for a way to go down that path. And all I would tell them, and you don't even have to be still in middle school or high school. You could be my age. I'm 32 years old, and I'm still learning every day, and I'm still trying to chase my dreams. So you're never too old to chase your dreams. Let's start with that first. But I would just say that just don't give up. Like if you really love doing it and and you have a passion for it and it makes you happy, then just don't give up on your dream. Keep pushing, keep trying. If you fail or if you fall down, don't let it keep you down. Get back up and try again. And the only way you're going to not succeed is if you just stop trying. And so, there's been plenty of times on my journey when it comes to covering sports where I've failed or I've been let down, and you just got to brush yourself off a little bit and get back up. Get back on that horse and try again. I think that's the best advice you can give in anything in life, but definitely in this industry, because it is a tough industry and it's really hard to break into it. And you just have to keep plugging away. And if you try hard enough and you keep pushing and you don't give up on yourself, then you can be successful. Absolutely.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find the Catfish on Ice on social media along with podcast platforms?
Yeah, definitely. So we're on Twitter. We're on Twitter. If you're on Twitter, you can follow the Catfish and Ice podcast at Catfish Ice. Our podcasting platforms, we're on Apple, we're on Spotify, we're on Google, Chrome Podcasts. Those are our three main platforms. You can also go to the Hockey Podcast Network website, and that actually has all the shows that the Hockey Podcast Network currently has. And so you can just basically go to their bookmark their website on your laptop or on your phone, and you can access all the different shows that the Hockey Podcast Network has, including the Catfish and Ice podcast. And you can listen to our podcast there as well. But I will say that our biggest platform would definitely be Apple or Spotify. And then we also like to stream live on Periscope. Periscope's getting ready to go away, but we'll find a different way to stream it live. But we stream a lot of our episodes live as we're recording on Twitter. So that's another way you can follow us along is on Twitter.
That's wonderful. Thank you again, Chad, for your interview, and best of luck with Catfish on Ice.
Thank you so much, Brandon. You take care.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Chad, for your interview, and best of luck.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.